Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, I'm really bored with that intro, so somebody's going to have to help me out at some point because it's too long. My daughter-in-law has told me that the intro is too fucking long, so there you go. Anyway, welcome to Desperate House Witches. I'm Raina Star, so you don't have to be. Desperate House Witches is not a G, PG, or even an R-rated show, so bad language, bodily function, dirty talk of any kind might offend you. This would not be the show for you. But you know, we're going to have a nice approach today because I'll set you up in a minute. Desperate House Witches is brought to you by the one, the only, the incomparable, Dorothy Morrison. Please check out DorothyMorrison.com for all things Dorothy Morrison. You can still order her books from her directly. And if you are looking for Wicked Witch Mojo products, yes, your local retailer, and tell them you want them. Because Dorothy Morrison products are amazing. Also, don't forget, I am going to be looking for you in July, last weekend of July, in Atlanta at the Mystic South Conference. Come and hang out, doing two live shows. So show up and come say hello. And I give out hugs for people who want them. So don't be shy. Okay, with me today, after me rescheduling, her rescheduling, all this rescheduling, because life just happens, man. I have the pagan Martha Stewart herself, the amazing Raechel Henderson. Hey, my friend, how are you?
I am doing great. I am so pleased to be back on your show and to be here today.
Yay. I am too. I'm so glad you agreed to come back. My life's been crazy. Your life's been crazy. It has been one of the weirdest years. I think you were saying that earlier, that it's just been one of those really strange years. What's been going on with you? We haven't talked in, God, it's over a year at this point. What's been happening with you?
Oh, well, I've been busy. I have been working. Yes, I had my third book from Llewellyn came out December of last year, and that's The Natural Home Will of the Year. I've been busy working on my fourth book now, which is The Witch's Wardrobe, and that is going to come out December of this year. So it's been a lot of writing and a lot of crafting.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I was teasing you about being the pagan Martha Stewart, but it's really kind of true, because anyone who hasn't gotten the Natural Home Wheel of the Year, you need to get this book, because quite frankly, it is the pagan Better Homes and Gardens, y'all. I'm telling you, it is putting Better Housekeeping to shame. First of all, it's gorgeous. It is really gorgeous, and it's so helpful because I am sans ideas. I have no clue about, appropriate. Well, if you know me, you know appropriate is not the first thing that comes to your mind. But this book is so beautiful, and it's funny because I think the last time I was going to have you on, I actually talked about the book without you because I thought it was such a great book. And it still is a great book, which is why I was like, no, she's got to come on and talk about this herself because it really is beautiful. And I love the fact that, what's the old joke about Martha Stewart? You give her 2 tongue depressors and a roll of duct tape and she'll build you a house. And this is what this book is kind of like. It's like I could put spit and shoelaces together and we're having a party. It's phenomenal. So talk to me about how you got this book. First of all, why you created it, how you created it. Is this all stuff that you had been sitting on? Is this stuff you taught yourself? Is this stuff from your family? Give me some insights into how you got to this book. Because The Scent of Rosemary, Lemon and Rosemary, which was your previous book, which love, is similar, but not at all like this. I mean, it's got some basic ideas, but you really, really flesh them out for the home in this book in a big, big way.
Yeah. Well, the process, the original intent behind the book was a lot of people want to celebrate the Sabbats, but don't have an idea of how or how to approach it. And I was getting questions like, okay, well, I'm looking into getting into this, into paganism. I'm new to paganism. I want to know how I can celebrate these Sabbats, but I just don't know where to start. And so the original idea was to make kind of a beginner's guide to the Sabbats. And the more I worked on it and worked on the draft, and the more ideas that I had to put into it, it just kind of, originally it was just going to be like a thin little book, but I realized I had the opportunity to make something where it would give people not only a jumping off point, like you can take this information in it and just follow it to the letter and have your entire Sabbat ritual set out for you. But I also wanted to give people a jumping off point. And the comments about it being gorgeous, first off, thank you. Yes, they did. Llewellyn did a beautiful job with the book, and I wanted it to be part idea book, part lookbook to kind of inspire people. And then I also wanted to bring in the stuff that we do, my family and I do personally. Like everything that's in the book is stuff that we have, that has been part and parcel of our own Sabbat rituals over the years. It's just kind of, I wanted to show people, not only is it, I give people ideas, but show them that these are things that that can actually be done, as opposed to having like crafts that you have to have like spend $300 on various materials and machines and equipment and everything. I wanted to have a book where it could be, you have stuff sitting around the house that you can then put to use.
Which is amazing, because quite frankly, and I've seen crafting, and crafting has become this industry that is just so huge, and I don't think people realize just how expensive it is. I mean, just the price of yarn is insane if you're going to get something good quality. And I don't think people realize, you know, when they get into an artistic mode, supplies are not cheap at all. I have a lot of friends who craft, and you could go broke crafting, to be honest with you.
It's true.
Right?
And I also wanted to have crafts that are that can be kid-friendly, because I have two children who I raised in a pagan household, and, you know, you don't want to spend a lot of money on stuff when you're doing it with children, just because they don't have that concept of, you know, they're just pedal to the metal. They don't have any idea of being a little bit judicious with your use of paints and art supplies and the like. So this is very much like the in the book. They're my children. You'll see some of them. My son helped me with some of the pictures, and it's very much a family-oriented book that I want people to be able to use and use as a springboard and have it inspire them over the years.
Oh, definitely. And the picture, I mean, the photography is amazing. The recipes are yummy, and it looks like shit I could actually do. And don't laugh. No, don't laugh, because quite frankly, I have two left thumbs. They're both brown. I can't grow things. I can't create things. I'm not a writer. I'm none of the things. But the book inspires me to feel like, you know what? That doesn't sound so hard. Maybe I can do that. This recipe sounds really delicious, and it's not 9,000 ingredients. I could try that and probably do a good job with it. I mean, there's just a lot of things in here, you know, and again, I'm also somebody who doesn't have a lot of time. And you do so many beautiful things. You talk about taro in the book, and you talk about chicken, and you talk about, you know, crafting and making offerings. I mean, you really go. I mean, this book covers so much. It's not like a party planner, although it is part party planner. You basically take a pagan person and say, hi, you could make all of these wonderful things happen for yourself. And I think that's lovely. And I really wish that there had been books like this when I was coming up, because I will tell you, the cost of the books, the cost of supplies, it was crippling then. Now it's even more so. So I'm glad you're giving folks the opportunity to create, and it's so much more. Oh God! And the energy is so different when it's something you've created yourself, as opposed to something you bought. I don't even. Can you speak to that, because I can't even.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Part of my my ethics come from, one, I'm a poor person. Like, I grew up poor. I am, constantly, as a writer, you're constantly struggling. So I really want to have things that don't cost a lot of money, that take advantage of what you already have on hand. When you do that, when you're being resilient like that and being creative like that, it taps into a part of yourself that doesn't get tapped into when you're just clicking on buy now on like Amazon or, some website, or going to Target or whatever. Now, going and buying stuff, if that's what you can do, there's no shame in that. But I always feel like a lot of people think that they don't have artistic talents or they aren't creative. I think that our society has very much kind of burned into us this idea that only special people are creative. And I kind of want to push back on that, especially with this book, where I'm like, here are simple things that you can do. And when you create for yourself, you make your own altar items, you make your own food, you create, like, even if it's just making a very simple altar cloth, that is something that you have done, that you have put your energy into, that is going to serve you better as a pagan. As I'm also a witch, so as a witch, it's going to tie to your energy more, and you're going to find that whatever your goals are with your altar, with your worship, with your life, that's going to come more easily because you have your energy imbued into these items that you have made that help you with that.
I think it's so important to remember, what it was like. I mean, because back when I was first starting and I was first actually doing, spells and stuff and witchcraft, it was those moments in front of the altar that I had made out of a snack table, I think. One of those old-fashioned folding tea trays, you know what I'm talking about? From like the 60s.
Yep.
And standing there and just, speaking my own words and writing my own ritual for whatever it was. And I just look back on those days as those days were really powering too, because everything there, everything on that table is something that I had put there, or I had found, or I had crafted. Now, I'd never crafted my own knife or anything like that, but I mean, the tools that I had at the time were all things that I came up with myself. And sometimes I look at, and I'm older now, and I've got the nice shinies, and I've got the nice pointy objects that were made. And I've been very, very, very lucky, and I'm full of gratitude. But sometimes it's those old moments that you remember where it was just you and your gods and your candle. And that was it, babe.
Yep.
And that's like the seat of all the magic in the world for a person. It's right there. It's not the pretty shiny or the trappings or anything like that makes the person a magical person. I mean, and I found that out the hard way, because there were times I was like, well, my friends have this and that, and one day I'll have that stuff too, and then I got that stuff, and it was like, okay, that's just more stuff. That's fine. But it doesn't make you more magical. It doesn't make the magic stronger. It just makes it more expensive, which is not how it works.
Yeah, I think that's one of those lessons that we have to learn as witches. Yeah, that magic doesn't need to have tools. Your intention and your will are really all that you need. The tools just make it a little easier to focus it. And I think that's something that a lot of people, you start off looking and going, oh, okay, I need the crystals, and I need the chalice, and I need the cauldron, and I need this and that. And like you, I have found over the years that my practice has become much more streamlined, to the point where, my altar is not as crowded with items as it used to be, because I've gotten to the point where I'm much more comfortable in myself and in my work, that I don't need to have all of the accoutrements that we start off thinking we need.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And, back in the old, and I'm a bit older than you, so back in the old days, what we were told was limited in scope. We didn't have internet. We barely had books in the library to reference. And it was hard to come by, authors, all of that. So now that there's all this, there's a wealth of it, we can be a lot pickier about it. So I'm really glad. I'm just so glad that, witchcraft has become more mainstream, although I live in the South, so maybe not everywhere yet, but we're working on it. But it's a good thing, because again, and I've said this 1,000,001 times, I remember the days when all we wanted was to be not having people run from us, thinking that we were going to turn them into toads. I mean, that's not the reality of the practice, to be honest with you. We're just like everybody else. We got bills and shit. We just believe our faiths are different. That's it. That's the whole sum and total right there.
Yep.
And I
absolutely
like to promote the fact that we are just normal people like everybody else. But I did want to ask you, because you are a parent, you are in a magical household, or you're raising children. I wanted to ask you if that has gotten easier as the children have gotten older, or is it still difficult? Is it something that, like, the kids talk about at school?
With my daughter, she talked about it more at school when she was younger. I think because children are much more elastic and much more, open to talking about things. My kids are, it's so funny, because they've gotten to the point where they'll see something in the house, and their first question is, okay, is this witchy shit or is this crafting shit? And I'm like, sometimes it's both. And I have found that it's easier with them being older, but also I think because they got their own interests, and they're not really interested that much in the magic or the paganism. Although I do know that having been raised in this household, they have certain notions and certain ways of approaching the world that are still very much pagan and very much witchy, in the same way that, being raised in a Christian household, you would have certain attitudes and ideas that have been supported by that being raised in that environment. Right now, both of my kids are, like my daughter, she's 20 now, so she's not a kid anymore, although she's always going to be a kid to me. And my son is 13, and they, I think they both are at this stage where it doesn't really, paganism and witchcraft really don't have a lot to do with them, but I think that's kind of a phase that all kids go through where, we've got the teenagerhood and the young adulthood where they're figuring out other stuff. The way I view it is I've given them a foundation, and I feel like it's a good foundation that as they get older, it's something that they will be able to come back to that will be supportive of them.
Oh, shit. I'm so sorry. Hang on.
That's
I hit the wrong button. Pardon me. Wow, that theme song, it doesn't want to die, does it? Anyway, but, I find that interesting because my kids are now in their 30s. And while they were raised in a pagan household, they were more observing because, having been forced into Pentecostal church as I was and all of these different things, when I was younger, it occurred to me that for me, religion is such a personal decision, and I don't believe that, people go to hell, or that's just not anything I ever bought into. So I'm like, you know what? People have the right to decide for themselves what they want to be in my family. So I didn't push anything either way. But now, as they've gotten, and so, when you're raised with it, I guess it's just not a big fucking deal like it used to be. Couldn't talk about it, don't tell your friends, they're going to come and take mom away, stuff like that. But I guess, again, when you're raised with it, it's not that big a deal. I think now that my sons are in their 30s, they're actually more interested in it now than they were when it was, more taboo and they were younger and it was more fascinating. They just seem more interested now in knowing about it, which I find so wonderful because, of course, in a house like mine, the worst thing you could do is become Pentecostal and like a lawyer or something. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those things that your mother probably would have been thrilled to have, but we're like, no, thank you, no.
Yeah. Well, and we have the added, my family has this added layer because we are, my daughter is a lesbian, my husband is pansexual, I'm bisexual, so we're a big queer family. And so we have that extra layer of, stuff that would have, even 10 years ago been taboo and don't talk to people or tell people about this. We've been lucky mostly in the fact that up until 2 years ago, we were living in Illinois, outside of Chicago, which is a much more accepting and open kind of area. We're now in Wyoming, which is a little more red, a little less open about and accepting about certain things. But we always just kind of lived our life the way, we wanted to. And we were lucky in the fact that where we were living, it just wasn't a big deal. And now that's something that I hope that they carry with them, that they're confident in their personalities and in their beliefs and in who they are.
Mm-hmm. Has it been difficult for you where you are now? I mean, have you gotten any kind of, sideways glances or anything from the neighbors, or are people just being maybe a little too curious about you, or is everybody pretty much staying to themselves and behaving?
Mostly everybody. We moved to Laramie, which is a college town. We specifically chose it because it's a college town. So it's a little more open and there's got a couple different pagan stores in it. It's got a lot of college students and a lot of people who are much more just accepting. But Wyoming also has very much a kind of don't poke your nose into other people's business sort of thing vibe.
Yeah.
It's where I grew up. I grew up in Wyoming, so it's very much, I'm used to this idea of people are just kind of like, you just do your thing, I'll do my thing, let's leave each other alone. We have had a couple of missionaries show up at the door, and I've just been able to say, look, we're not interested, and they're like, okay, and then they leave. So that's nice.
Oh yeah, I've had similar experiences, and it's interesting because I've had experiences of that on the West Coast and the East Coast, and it's just weird. It doesn't. The script for them does not seem to change no matter where they are, whether it's long jackets or short sleeves. You're getting the same rap, and it's like, no, have a nice day, bye. No, we don't believe in Jesus every. And it's funny because I actually do believe in Jesus as a person. Like, if I believe in my God, it kind of gives credence to other people's gods as well, which is something that, people have a hard time with me about that. It's like, listen, we're all picking our mythology here. So, I mean, why is mine more credible than anybody else's? Now, that isn't to say that the followers are the same. Not at all. But I do believe that, when we're talking about spirituality and we're talking about deity, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't Jesus be, you know what I'm saying, like a son of God or whatever? Does that have less credence than what I believe? Probably not. I just like what I believe better. I'm more comfortable with it. But, I don't even know where I was going with that, but I just find it fascinating that people do shit like that and, don't want to leave each other alone. So I'm really glad you found a place to be, and obviously if you've grown up there, then you had a working knowledge of where you were going, which is smart. I find so many people move and then don't realize what they're in the middle of, and it's like, did you not investigate this shit before you pack everything and move? And it astounds me how people just do that by the seat of their pants, and I'm like, how are you living? That's great.
Yeah, that's I missed mountains, and Illinois is very flat and does not have mountains, and then we moved, and so we moved to where there were mountains, and I have gone up into the mountains and into the wilderness more often in the last 2 years than I ever went to any of the museums or zoos or other cool things that the city of Chicago had. It's just a matter of figuring out what you're interested in and what calls to you. And for me, it was the mountains. And so now I'm back where I belong, I guess.
Well, and it makes perfect sense in light of your writing style because, it's certainly, I would assume, easier to find stuff, foraging and such in the mountains than it is in a city. You have more of an opportunity to reach wild plants and, work with animals and trees and all the beautiful things in nature because there's more of it there. Is that pretty much the way it is?
Yes, to a good extent, but I also, like with my books, I do try to, and with my writing, I try to encourage people that even if you're in a city space, you still can connect to the nature and connect to the divine. It might be a little more difficult. You might have to listen a little more carefully, but it can be done. Yeah. I don't want people thinking that the only way they can be a pagan or a witch is if they're in a cabin out in the woods or something like that. Because for a lot of people, being in the city might be what they enjoy, and they're not any less valid because they're in a city as opposed to a natural setting. It's just, for me, I have found that for my my personal practice, that being someplace where I have access to that, to wild places and natural places, is important.
You know, it's so interesting you say that, because I do live in the city, but I live in a part of the city that still has trees, and it's really interesting because at night, you close your eyes and you listen to all the sounds of nature. It's right outside the door, literally. I mean, any time there's a patch of grass, like behind this apartment complex, we have bamboo and all kinds of animals that climb up and down the bamboo and get on the landings and just kind of hang out and, you know, relax and eat whenever they can find something. It's really interesting. There's so much more nature so close to people than they even realize it. I mean, it's lovely to be able to have access to a stream, but a lot of us don't. And that's okay, because there's still spirits in the water, even in the faucet. I was taught that by Anwin Avalon. She's like, you know what, the spirit that lives in nature is coursing through your house and around your house, no matter how concrete it may appear to be. Anytime you see a little speck of green somewhere, that is nature letting you know that it is alive, well, kicking, and still in for the fight. So it is possible to appreciate it and get into it and access it, even in a space where it feels very barren and concrete.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful way to put it.
It wasn't my way to put it. I can't take credit. Like I said, I was taught by others. And that's what I love about what I am. You know, I'm very lucky to be able to talk to folks like yourself and learn, because, you know, even at my age, it's like I know very little. I know very little about everything. And, you know, the idea that I mean, if you had told me 20 years ago that I would have a podcast where, you know, authors would come on and, like, actually have conversations with me and hang out, I would have been like, it's a dream. That would be nice, but I don't see it ever happening. And then it happened. You know, so don't ever discount anything, no matter where you live or no matter what the current circumstance is. Things change, and they change faster than you. You know, the fact that Raechel is here talking to me about this book, you got to get this book. If you like The Scent of Lemon and Rosemary, which was gorgeous, you're going to love this book. This book is so, it's, first of all, it's just visually stunning, not to mention the fact that the information therein is just informative. Like, a lot of people don't know why you throw rice at a wedding. And you talk about it. It's like there's just so many of our reality that we take for granted or don't pay attention to the origin stories of them. And you dive deep into these simple traditions and things that we recognize but can be made more in tune to our spirituality. Although I will have to say, this book, in spite of the title, is a book, my mom would have liked this book if she were still alive, because of all of this. No, because my mother was into interesting information. Now, when it came to crafting, she couldn't, and when it came to cooking, she was a disaster. And this might have helped, I'm just saying. But she loved books like this. She loved, you know, things about taste and creativity and, you know, making beauty out of seemingly nothing, which is something you're really good at. So just to
thank you.
Tell people, oh, you're very welcome. I mean, you know, you also wrote So Witchy, which was another type of craft book, you know, about making things, which is beautiful. I have a copy of that too, of course. did you originally come on the show to talk about that, or to talk about? No, it was originally for the scents of lemon and rosemary, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I hope.
Wow.
I mean, my whole goal with my books is just to give information to people and to empower them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that my fourth book, which is coming out in December, will be similar in that it's a book about showing your own witchy wardrobe. So there's information in there on actually building a wardrobe. There's tops and bottoms and dresses and accessories, and the whole idea is that most people are not off the rack sizing, and so this gives instructions on how to make something to your own measurements that will and to your own designs and desires with your choices of fabrics and trims and all of that. And my hope with that is it just kind of helps people who want to have more of a witchy aesthetic to kind of on the outside look how they feel on the inside, but might find it difficult to find exactly what they want when they go shopping.
No doubt. No doubt. Listen, my old ass wants to dress up like Stevie Nicks every once in a while. I'm just going to tell you. And if I could put something together for this bubble butt that'll look nice, I would be very happy with that. I'm just telling you. Size inclusivity is super duper important. I think some companies are starting to get it, but they're really late to the party. The terminology, different sizes has changed so much. I mean, I remember when the sizes were numbers and they were pretty much same across the board, and some things were just not made for me. You know what I'm saying? Some things were just not appropriate, as I was told. Really, for someone of my frame. And it's not like I'm a short round woman. What can I say? There is nothing.
Hey, short round woman here too, so I gotcha.
Thank you. Right on. Short round women unite. But seriously, short round people unite. It's fine. I mean, and I love that, and I love the fact that you are constantly coming up with ways for us to do things for ourselves that we were like looking to other people to help us with. And you're like, no, you don't need a company to help you with this. I love that. It's so important.
Oh, well, yeah, I spent years as a seamstress doing custom clothing and custom costuming. So that has kind of been where this comes from, where I have worked with people to make articles of clothing that make them feel good. And frankly, for me, there was never any better feeling than to watch somebody put something on that I made for them to their measurements, and just to see the happiness and the confidence that it would inspire in them. Clothing is very much a expression of who we are, and you can do so much magically with clothing that I think a lot of times, again, our society has lost that idea and wants to shame people, one, for not fitting anything that comes off the rack, but also it's kind of stripped some of the power that you get from wearing clothing that gives you a boost of confidence, or that fits you, that tells people all around you who and what you are. And that's kind of what has always been a guiding light in all of my writing is I want people to feel empowered. I want people to feel comfortable. I want people to recognize that they can create their own magic, whether it's in sewing something that for them to wear, making something for their altar, cooking a meal that incorporates different ingredients for their energetic properties and for their magical properties. I want people to understand that they can live a magical life, that that's not something that is beyond their reach, and that it's something they can do for themselves, that they don't have to look to a corporation or to others to give to them.
So incredible and so true. Like I said earlier, most of the strongest magic I've ever been able to perform was me, a table, and a candle. You don't really need all the extra stuff. And I'm going to have to put my money where my mouth is on that and start getting rid of a lot of things. But, it's interesting when you talk about clothing specifically, and as much as I love Natural Home Rule of the Year, I'm really super duper excited about your next book because, and a lot of us do not have natural sewing skills. Will you be giving instruction on that in the book?
Oh, absolutely. It has all sorts of, it's meant with the idea that you're an absolute beginner. It has all the information on stitches and tools and techniques. It's similar in the way it's set up as with So Witchy, which So Witchy had all of that information at the beginning as well. The whole point is I'm presuming that people who come to this book have no knowledge whatsoever about sewing, and this is their first sewing book that they're picking up. That doesn't mean that all of the patterns and all of the projects are all really simplistic. There are some, there's a good mix of simplistic and beginner type projects up to expert type projects. Like one of the projects in there is creating a waist cincher. So not quite a corset, but something that kind of gives you a little bit of shaping around your waist and looks awesome and witchy. And that's more of an expert level of pattern and project. But there's also plenty of simple ones that people can start off with and gain confidence as they're sewing, and work their way up to the more difficult projects.
Cool. I love that. So I don't, because, my happy ass would look at the most difficult thing and say, I'll never be able to do it. Well, no, if you don't start, you never will be able to do it. But if you give me things to work my way up, I stand a better chance of actually accomplishing something more difficult. I think we're so used to overwhelming ourselves that if we're not doing right away, we almost feel like we should give up because we're not perfect at it immediately, like we don't have this natural talent. And the interesting thing is that my friends with natural talent have been working at this for years. It's like, I started off one stitch at a time, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I undid them, and I redid them, and then I undid them again, and then I redid them again. I went slower. I was more patient with myself. I took more time. Nothing is built in a day, nothing of any value that really super lasts. So the idea that, if you're not good at it right away, you never will be is nonsense. You have to give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of time, but it's worth it. It's worth it. When you make something, I will never forget the first time I actually created a dress for myself, and it was for a wedding. Not mine. I was just a guest. But I created my own dress, and I was like, I did this. I couldn't believe I had done it. And I had done it in just a couple of days. But it was nice. It was pretty. It was shiny. It had great flow. And I have to tell you, that was probably almost 40 years ago. So I'm out of practice. Yeah, it's been a lot longer that I haven't sewn than I have. So, I love the idea that, I can start from the ground up again with your book and, do things that are of a style that I want to do, as opposed to having to modify someone else's style, which is generally what I find in most of today's patterns. You're looking at a modern pattern, and you're trying to figure out how to make it more of our aesthetic, as opposed to having somebody say, here, I've laid this out for you, and it's our aesthetic, and you're going to like it. And to me, that's super exciting.
Yeah, I really honestly believe that people are, one, more creative than they think they are, but two, are more capable than they think they are. I kind of blame a little bit schooling in that when I was growing up, we had home economics classes that taught you, basics of cooking and sewing and other things. My daughter had one of those classes. My son, I don't think, is going to have one of those classes, and I think that we kind of got away from this idea of teaching practical skills to kids in some places, so that people look at sewing and they think that, oh my goodness, this is a highly specialized skill. I couldn't do that. When it really is, most sewing that you would do is pretty simple. And so I love the idea that you made a dress and you felt empowered and you were like, yes, I can do this thing. And that's kind of what I try to do with my books, is be like, no, you really can do this. And let's sit down and have all of the instructions and have all the pictures so that you can follow along with it. And at the end of it, you have something that you're like, yeah, I made that. I can do this.
Mm-hmm. And you can look at it and be proud of it and maybe do another one. And, maybe then as you get your confidence, do it for someone else who either doesn't have the time or desire to do it. I mean,
right.
Skills are so important, and so very few of us actually have them because, like the way I was raised, you get out there, you get a corporate gig, you do the thing, you get married, you have children, find someone to take care of you, quote unquote. I'm older than you, obviously. And I'll tell you honestly, the home economic classes that I took in like junior high school were, you want to know what they taught us? They taught us how to stitch a seam back together. They taught us how to make a lemonade, macaroni and cheese, and chocolate pudding. That is the extent of what we learned in my home economics class back in the 70s. Yeah. It was not, I had more fun in woodworking class. I was the only girl, and it was great because I was the only girl, and, people were very helpful. But I enjoyed that more, but then again, girls didn't work in wood back then. It's like, well, it's not very feminine. So, just so annoying.
Yeah.
The lack of empowerment we went through was just crazy.
And I feel like that's a good indicator that also one of the things that I try to encourage people is if a certain craft isn't really doing it for you, maybe it's just that craft. Maybe there's a different craft or a different skill set that is more in line with your personality and with your abilities. And so I with the Natural Home Wheel of the Year, one of the reasons why there's so much information in there is because I wanted to at least touch base on several different types of ways that you could celebrate and you could get into the Sabbat, so that it's not just, okay, it's only an altar. No, here's decorating that you could do if you don't have an altar, or if you're not like out of the broom closet so you can't have something like that set up. But here's some decorations you could do that will have a similar meaning. Here's recipes if you're much more cooking oriented as opposed to crafting oriented. Like, there is something, everybody can be creative in some way. It's just finding that way and finding that creative outlet that makes sense for you. So I don't want people approaching my books or approaching my writings with this idea of, oh, well, I have to be an expert sewer, or I have to be an expert crafter, or I have to like to use glitter paints or something like that in order to learn anything from these books. I want people to understand that they will find something as long as they sit down and try, and I encourage people to try something. And even if they try a craft and get at the end of the craft and be like, yeah, this wasn't for me, at least they tried and they discovered something important about themselves, that is not an outlet, a creative outlet for them, that they should try something else.
I agree with you. I think the ability to find a creative outlet is so important, and something that is so downplayed these days. It's like people are taught that working is the only, if you're not making money, it's not worthwhile. And, you know, I find so many people are so frustrated, and I think they would just feel better if they could let something creative out, whether it's drawing or painting or singing or poetry or, you know, doing something from your soul is so important, to just get it out of your system and express it. And I think we'd all be a lot healthier if we had those kind of outlets, and those outlets were maybe perhaps more prized than they are now. Because I do remember that talent was, you know, something that was appreciated back in the day, and now everybody's like, this world is so disposable, you can just buy it, and if it breaks, you just buy a new one, and it's really kind of depressing.
It is, and it's there's also this idea that crafting and hobbies have to be commodified. That if it's not enough to knit a blanket, but now you have to then turn it into a side hustle. This idea that you're right, that if you aren't making money, that it's not worth it, is such a just sinister and entrenched belief in our society that it doesn't really help anybody. It doesn't serve any useful purpose other than to make people miserable. And I really wish that we could get to the point where we unlock and unhitch the idea of a hobby from having to be something that makes money. Doing something just for the enjoyment of it. Also, this idea of amateurism, where you can be an amateur and that's okay. Like, you know, if you're playing an instrument, you're an amateur, you know, guitar player, and that's okay. You're just playing for the enjoyment of it. You're not playing to get better so that you can join a band, so that you can get a record deal, so that you can make money from that. I really wish that we could get back to this idea of hobbies for enjoyment, and that being an amateur at something is not something to be ashamed of.
Seriously, it's so true. I mean, God, it's mind-boggling. And I think this is why part of the reason why people are so miserable, because everything is so money-driven. And it's like you feel like you're wasting your time if it's not bringing in a buck. And like you said, the whole idea of everything having to become a side hustle, that's not what enjoyment is. That's not why you picked flowers as a child or blew on dandelions. It's not why you drew the sky in your house. You know what I'm saying? Everything wasn't incentivized through money. And I think, I don't know, it's almost like we had a better grasp on reality the more we didn't deal with it, like in a structural sense. You know, the idea of children just daydreaming and having that time to daydream just makes you a more creative person. And I will tell you honestly, the most not relaxed necessarily, but the most people that I know who have their shit together, that don't lose it at the slightest misstep or the tiniest infraction, are people who express themselves through art, some kind of art, whether it's writing or singing or dancing or acting or whatever it is, or creating, it just seems like there's a grounding sense when you're able to do something from your soul that you can express outwardly. And I just really want folks to get back to that. And with the things that you write, it gives us a really great guide to get there. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate your books, because you're a beautiful writer, obviously, because they keep giving our book deals, goddammit. So obviously Raechel is doing something right, and I love these books. I mean, they're beautiful. Your books just get prettier every time. And I quite frankly loved the cover of The Scent of Lemon and Rosemary. I thought it was just so understated and beautifully done, but gorgeous. You know what I mean? Everything doesn't have to be full of flash and glitter, although as a witch, I do like my share of flash and glitter. But these are just really wonderful books that, and it's not like you have to read it cover to cover. You can use it as a reference point and a jumping point, and you're working on this holiday, get this recipe, or you're working on a protection blessing for your home, and there's this thing available outside and that thing available, or just get this bowl of water. I mean, simple stuff that I think we discount more than we should, and to have somebody say, no, you're getting too far away from the way things were supposed to be to begin with. Not that things don't change, we always wind up going back to when all the fluff and all the trappings don't work, because at some point they don't work. It's kind of almost like being, having this habit of, whether it's chocolate for me or pot for somebody else, it's like you wind up needing more to get that high again, and a lot of us get it through stuff. And the idea that we can stop doing it through stuff that we purchase and can do it through stuff that we can make ourselves, I think it's going to be a lot more soul satisfying. So I think you really bring us back around to more of what's important. So I just got to tell you, I really appreciate that. I'm ecstatically excited about your next book, because the idea that you are doing patterns for the witchy aesthetic, yeah, baby, bring it.
Oh, thank you so much. It really means a lot to hear that from you. As a writer, I tend to work in isolation for the most part. I'll have my editors go over my works, but they're looking to make it better, so a lot of their comments are going to be criticisms. So it's oftentimes really hard to see if what you're doing has any kind of impact, except for when people say nice things about your writing. So it's always good to have that reaffirmation that what I'm doing, that I'm hitting my marks and I'm hitting my goals of what I'm trying to do with my writing, that it's resonating with people.
It is. You're phenomenal. I'm so appreciative of every. I mean, first of all, the time you spend with me alone is just I love, obviously. But, you're just wonderful. So do you have anything coming up that people can come and learn from you? Are you doing any classes? Do you have any, courses online? Is there anything I need to know about that you have not told me?
I'm actually going to be doing LlewelynCon again this year, which is a virtual con and is available. I'm going to be doing a event or a workshop on magical home protection, and that's going to be on June 7th at 12 p.m. If you search up LlewelynCon, you'll find it. It's a free event that you can sign up for. It's and they just have us on virtually where we talk to people and have Q&A times, and it's always a great time. They have tons of authors who are going to be doing that this year, so I highly recommend if people have, the weekend free to go and check out and find some of their favorite authors to listen to.
That's awesome. And how do they find you specifically if they want to consult with you?
If you want to interact with me, I'm mostly on Instagram. You can just search for Raechel Henderson on there, or search for my handle on Instagram is idiorhythmic, which is a word that means living by one's own life patterns. But yeah, if you search for Raechel Henderson, you'll find me on there. And that's where I do most of my online social media stuff.
Let me just remind people of how Raechel is spelled so that they're not confused. This is not the typical spelling of Raechel. It's Raechel, because I don't want people to get frustrated when they start typing in Rachel and go, huh? So it's R-A-E, think Ray in the beginning, and it's Raechel Henderson. And Raechel, I cannot thank you enough. This has been such a treat. You are so wonderful to come back on and hang out with me. And we need to talk about your new book when it comes out, so I'm hoping I can talk you into coming back on.
Oh, always. I always enjoy talking with you and chatting about all sorts of witchy, pagan-y stuff. So, yes, and thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.
Oh, I appreciate it so much. Again, the book is The Natural Home Wheel of the Year. The author is Raechel Henderson. I encourage you to get this book. It's really beautiful, and it just goes into so much of what we think is common knowledge, and it explains it. You just really have to get the book. It's just such a primer for the pagan home. It really is. So, again, Raechel, thank you so much, and I will talk to you very soon. Thanks for coming back on.
Thanks. I look forward to talking to you again.
Yay! Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you. All right, guys, that's it. We are wrapping up for the week. Have a wonderful 3-day weekend if you get to have one. If not, I'm thinking about you and hoping that you get some kind of rest and enjoyment during the weekend. Love you guys. Talk to you next week.